thank you very much for inviting me here today. I was a little bit taken aback when I saw the list of speakers and subjects like failure leadership, false starts and disasters, the costs, and I thought, well, when you're invited to speak on a seminar like this, then clearly you're in the wrong business, right? So hopefully my speech won't give you that impression. So yes, I'm a lawyer by trade. I'm going to skip through to this one. I was originally a naive law student, thought I would do something exciting like human rights law, but like lots of other lawyers, 15 or 16 years ago, I ended up becoming a corporate lawyer. I worked for the biggest law firm on the planet, and that brought me out to Hong Kong and Singapore. And I worked for big banks for a long time, and then I became a board lawyer around about 10 years in. It's not actually, it's not for certain that you become bored, but I did. I'm not saying that law is a bad profession. That took me on to try and do something a little bit special, and that was leave looking after really big clients and focus just on small companies and startups. So I left the safety of a big law firm, set up a company called Lawyers Without Ties because we wouldn't wear ties, and that seemed to be really the only objective that I had at this point. Serving small companies was absolutely new to me. It was a very, very different world. The market was huge. The uptake from clients was huge. We found ourselves quite quickly inundated as lawyers working for small companies in a market which we quickly discovered was 350,000 odd companies in Hong Kong, the same again in Singapore. And quite quickly we established a name for ourselves as being the go-to lawyers for small businesses and startups, which was very exciting, but also very, very difficult. It's hard to be the lawyer on the other side of the table. When you're not working for the banks, you're working for the small guy, you become a very, very different sort of lawyer. And unfortunately, you're limited by one massive factor, and that's your time. There's only so much time you have to work for small companies, therefore there's only so much you can really do. And we wanted to help companies in a much bigger way. So Lawyers Without Ties was by its own success always doomed to never succeed. So I did something that lawyers probably don't often do, and that's took the decision to become a founder, to start a startup, to go out and try and raise money, to go and get employees, to stop advising clients, and to start actually running a business. And Dragon Law is the result of a lot of hard work over the last few years. We raised several million US. Although there might be a belief that all lawyers are well off, I didn't have a penny to my name by the time I got around to starting up Dragon Law. We had to go out and find a lot of cash and a lot of people. There's now 35 of us, and we have, we think, a toolkit for helping small businesses to do the small amounts of legal work that are needed in a very, very efficient way without needing to go out to spend too much time and energy on law firms or your own time. So what I'm going to cover today is really my old way of thinking, the lawyer way of thinking, and then the founder way of thinking, so the way you guys, I imagine, think. What we've learned at Dragon Law, the common mistakes that startups make, the things that we get asked over and over again, the things where we can kind of add value by saying this is just a non-starter, and then some lessons that we've learned ourselves through both our experience and through our clients' experience. And then if you really have some question and answers at the end. So the lawyer way of thinking, this was probably my way of thinking when I left the law firm. Lawyers are trained to be risk averse, and we're trained to make decisions quickly when we need to, but ordinarily not make decisions quickly. We're trained to give two answers when there should be one answer, and then to say there's a disclaimer because if answer 2 is wrong, take answer 1. We operate in packs. There's a reason why law firms became enormous. It's because it's far safer to have 100 lawyers who all don't know the answer than to have one. And it's possible to essentially be a lawyer who frankly never comes across anything genuinely commercial in his entire career. You might work on lots of deals, but you frankly don't really understand them because you've never been in that space. You've left law school, you've gone to a law firm, and that's your view on a transaction. So that's very, very much in contrast to the founder approach and the founder way of thinking. These guys look like this fashionable audience here. These are the sort of risk takers. I might just stop at this point and try and get a sense of who it is I'm talking to. Just a show of hands. Who here is comfortably in a corporate job and is thinking about becoming a founder? A few. Who here is already in a startup? And who here is in a startup that's in trouble because they're at this conference? Okay, brilliant. And who here is none of the above? What are you doing then? Students, great. Is that a student as well?
Me?
Yeah.
Student for life.
Student for life.
I sold my business.
Right. Okay.
But I want to think about if I'm going to start again. I want to see, what are common faults that you guys are talking about, so I don't go into that sort of thing.
Great. Okay. And there was one other, I think, in the far distance. Is that right?
Working in the corporate, and I want to join the startup.
Okay. So sort of sitting on the sidelines. Right. And who here has got a day job but also a startup job on the side? Okay, go first. What is it you're doing in the day job, and what are you doing in your evening slot?
Well, I have an office job, a day job, just in corporate services, and then during evening I'm just trying my idea.
Right. And what's your startup? Right, yeah, you're allowed to say that. If you're not, then please.
I'm not ready to say.
Okay, fine. Anyway, I just thought I'd jump in. It's just to make sure that I know who it is I'm talking to. Anyway, you guys probably, when you're running your business, you will have great commercial insights. You will have a whole bunch of useful skills. But what's very, very different to the lawyer and to you is that you must make a decision. You must choose A and B. You can get all manner of people to advise you, but ultimately, where your business goes, the buck stops with you, and that's the sort of great difference and the great learning from my perspective of what it is to run a business. I might actually just interrupt myself again. My mum's sitting over there. My mum came over from England this week, and I thought she could come and meet me. Mum, what did you think when I told you over the phone that I was leaving law? Do you think that was a good idea? This is I'm hijacking it here. Sorry.
I couldn't check my bank balance.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it was a risk. But, But actually, by that time, I knew that you were going to be a board lawyer. And I thought there's a lot of risk in staying in a job that you are not getting a lot of fulfillment from. It's a lot better to go and do something even if it's scary. It's worth doing.
That was not rehearsed.
I gave you.
Hello, ma'am.
And I checked my bank balance.
So a common theme of the learnings we've had since we set up Dragon Law from startups, there's one theme we see time and time again. It's that law should be something you do tomorrow and not today. There's a concept that we're too small, in this comment here, we're too small to negotiate terms with our supplier, so I just signed the contract. A regretful founder. This is a common theme. The belief that essentially when you're one person, two people, three people, you're not 35 people, so you haven't got any legal needs. That you're not doing enough contract stuff, so therefore you haven't got any legal needs. I'll read out a few more quotes that I see. I don't know what I'm doing, so I might make a mistake, so I just don't do it. I'll hire someone else and I'll delegate the legal work. No one will be interested in the IP of our business. When we're big, we'll sort it out. This concept that you don't need to do things now. Sorry, I'm struggling with technology here.
Very good.
Yeah. Help me. It's moving on mine, but it's not moving on the screen. Sorry.
Postmortem, failures, technology, Windows 10. That's the one. That's the one.
There we go. Cool. That's great. Cool. So this is a slide. Can anyone tell me where that is? You probably have a guess, can't you? It's Silicon Valley. And what do all those blobs have in common? Apart from the fact that I'm 8 years older than the oldest guy in Silicon Valley. I found out this morning in The Guardian. What do they all have in common, do you think?
Location.
Money, location. What about the names and logos themselves? Let's give you a hint.
Brands, IP.
Yeah, so they're all brands. They've all got IP. All these, I imagine, startups that are based in this very, very small area have all done one thing. They've gone out and done some pretty simple stuff at day one. They've gone out and they've registered their trademark. They've thought about their intellectual property. One of the big bandwagon themes that we see in Hong Kong, and I don't know whether it's learned from TV series like Silicon Valley, is that a client will arrive and he'll say, I've got to have an NDA. And you're like, OK, so what's your NDA? A non-disclosure agreement. What's your NDA for? Well, I can't talk to this person because my startup is secret. But when you dig a little deeper, these guys haven't actually made any attempts to protect the very small amount of IP they have. A startup has absolutely nothing, right? You incorporate your company, you're the same person you were the day before, you got nothing. But you might have some intellectual property. The attempt to carry on and start doing other stuff and ignoring the fact that that's probably the only asset of your business is something that, even though we probably know it, is something that 90% of startups will do. And then when it comes to worrying about the protection, they think that signing an agreement, a year later is going to help them. So that for me was just a really stark reminder of how important it is. And I was chatting to a gentleman, Lucian, I don't know where you are, Lucian, 2 seconds ago, who was telling me about the use of three occasions, I think in Hong Kong that you mentioned, where businesses have either taken the name entirely and also the business and just started trading under it, or traded under names that are so similar that, frankly, a little bit of protection might have been a good starting point. And these aren't complicated, difficult things to do. These are, half an hour, an hour's work at your point just to get your ducks in a row and to sort of, if you like, do business like a grown-up. Similar sort of theme, apparently we need to sign insert name of document, an MOU, a memorandum of understanding. We need to sign a sales agreement. This concept that I'm a small company, therefore I can't guide my business in any direction, I'm told what to do by the bigger players, is another very, very common theme that we see. We tell all of our customers, never be afraid of negotiating. Try and draft the agreement yourself. Try and be the person that actually does the work. Don't go out to a meeting, do a deal blindly, and then come back and be told by the other party that you're going to sign their agreement and what you're signing is what you've agreed. You've probably agreed 2 or 3 small things. Why do you want to be signing a 20-page document from a stranger that you've just met? You probably don't be. Everything that we talk to our clients about and everything that our business is built on the basis that short and sweet execution, that you push yourself is where you want to be in any sort of transaction. So this brings me on to the nightmare story. I think we always need a story, and this actually is a true one. I think I talked a little bit before about agreements that you should definitely have in place. This is one that you absolutely must have. But they were my friends. We don't need any kind of agreement. I trust them. This is the story of a gentleman in Hong Kong. He was running, big guy, one of the biggest guys I've ever met in my life. He was running a gym and wanted to scale that gym across to various parts of Hong Kong. He was doing very, very well in one location, but quickly realized that he couldn't be in 5 locations at once. He went to his family and took a small amount of seed capital from them. I think it was, $50,000 or $60,000, so it was probably not inconsiderate in terms of what the family was putting on the line. He went out to seed capital. Venture capitalists, probably not, probably more like high net worth angels, I imagine. Raised another sort of $200,000 or $300,000 US. He'd been in business at this point for 6 months, owned the company outright, and was doing very well. During the process of this capital raise, he would have given away 52% of his company, so he was left with 48% of the company. Over the next, which you might say is rather a lot, but these are the facts. Over the next 6 months, it became quite apparent that the investor's view of the business and his view of the business were very, very different. And it got to a point 6 months later where, for whatever reason, his tenure as CEO was no longer possible. He decided to quit his job as CEO. In so doing, he quit his job and his role as director of the business. And he was now a guy that owned 48% of a company who was no longer an employee of it and was no longer a director of it. Now, that meant 2 things. It meant that he'd lost everything that he loved, but it also meant that the existing investors had a bunch of extra power. They could do things that wouldn't necessarily go in his favor. And what happened, which was almost inevitable, was they revalued the business. They invested more cash into the business. They wiped him out entirely. He was left with 2%, no job, and no company. And why did he have that? What agreement was he missing?
Founders agreement.
Founders agreement, shareholders agreement, exactly. When you set up a company in Hong Kong, when you set up a company in most countries, frankly, you're left with what are known as the articles, the sort of the bare, if you like, charter of what the company can do. It's got some pretty limited description of how you transfer shares, how you run board minutes, how you do basic stuff with the company. If you don't add extra layers to that through the personal agreements between the people that are running the business, you run a great risk that in the event that things like this happen, friends fall out, you can find quite quickly that you lose everything you've built. We're talking about something which happened in the space of a year, right? He went from owning a company to having absolutely nothing. But that's no problem because I pay a guy to help me out. Surely his lawyer should have helped him. Well, yes and no. I mean, for a start, I don't think this guy was using a lawyer. But even if you have a lawyer, you shouldn't be thinking that because you've got somebody else who knows stuff, this isn't your job. You're no longer just doing what it is you love. You're no longer just doing your business. You're also running a company, and these things go hand in hand. You need to understand what it is that your business is getting itself into so you can explain it to somebody else who asks you the question. Don't be the guy that walks around with a tool belt with a whole bunch of really useful legal tools that he doesn't understand, and he starts dropping words like DD, IP, NDA, I've got my IPO coming, but I've got my M&A first. Be the guy that actually understands it. Take a little bit of time to apply the law as you go along and understand it, and be the guy that actually kind of gets it. And use the law as a tool. That's a tool belt. Okay. Yeah, you spend a lot of time putting these slides together, right? Thank you. Thanks, Deepak. So what is the right documentation? Everything that my company provides, obviously. It's really simple stuff. Shareholders agreement, quite clearly, I think that's a really important document. It doesn't have to be something that's complicated. It just has to be essentially an agreement between you and people that may have opinions or interests that are in conflict with yours when you do business. When you start a company, everybody has their own objectives. You might be an investor that's seeking to make money out of the business from your investment. You might be a founder who's seeking to have glory and just to build a product. There's different reasons you do the company. Make sure that you understand what they are and understand what your exits are and what happens with the business. I know I said you shouldn't need NDAs, but of course an NDA is still a very important document if you've got your IP in order. So make sure that you have NDAs for negotiating with outside counterparties and also for your staff. Again, you'll bring people onto this to your company that may or may not still be around a few months later. Things do go wrong time and time again. Make sure you've got the basic agreements for people that are working for you, consultancy agreements, employment agreements. Employment agreements, kind of obvious, right? And don't suppose most of you are going to be employing people without at least writing, I get paid X and Y. But consulting agreements are often ignored entirely. And consulting agreements contain some pretty important language to companies that we see, again, getting missed and missed and missed. Most all of you will have an employment agreement of some sort with your company, your big company that you might be working for now. It probably doesn't talk about intellectual property because it's not very important in bigger businesses. You probably don't have a massive impact on the business. If, on the other hand, you're coming in as either an employee or even worse still, a consultant to start doing something quite important involving things like building technology, a consultant retains the right to his work, right? So if you engage me as a consultant to build your website or to build to build the UX for your app, I own that IP. You don't. So I want to make sure that in the document, when I engage you to consult for me, that everything you do comes into my company. My job always as a business owner is to protect my company, to make sure I extract maximum value from everything I do. Time and time again, we see situations where we're not meeting the client at the right time, we're meeting them at the wrong time. They're saying, oh, I did a whole bunch of work, but he's saying that actually they own it now and I don't own it. Is that the case? Well, what did you agree? Well, he just built it. I paid him money and he built it for me. Well, then what did you agree about? Nothing. So very simple stuff. It's 5 minutes work, but it's about doing it now and not thinking about it tomorrow. 5 and 6, supply of goods, services, company secretarial. These are really just dealing with your external suppliers and also making sure your house is in order. And the other big area for documentation that we see a lot of, especially in this sort of community, is fundraising. A lot of what you do costs money. When I moved from LWT into Dragon Law, it's our journey of fundraising so far has taken us to $2 million. We're raising another similar amount of money now. I couldn't believe we spent this much cash, but we did. I think I originally thought it would cost us $100,000 US, and that was my original proposal. So 20 times that amount already burnt and a lot more to go. Your investors need to know that you are the sort of business that's investable. An investable business is a business that thinks about its paperwork, it thinks about its corporate governance, and it does that through the use of sort of documentation which is best in class. Make sure you've got a term sheet that you understand and know. Make sure that you're the one that owns it, you're not waiting to get it. Make sure you've got investment documentation that kind of matches up, is useful, deals with shareholding issues and problems investors might have. Make sure you understand the strategy in which you're going to raise your money, whether it's convertible note, whether it's just equity, but don't want to get too involved in that sort of stuff. Be a business which is investable, and inherently you are if you do this sort of stuff. And finally, Dragon Law overview. I'm not sure if I'm a bit fast on time or short on time. I think maybe I'm slightly over. It's way cooler to use an app than a lawyer. That's a basic gist of our business. We are a software company. You don't have to talk to lawyers. You push a few buttons, and it spits out all these agreements. Trust me, I'm a lawyer. There we go. And how does it work? You find a document, you create a document, you sign a document, and you store a document. And then all this half an hour's work is dealt with by you in a few short minutes. So that's me. I'm Daniel Walker. I'm the founder of Dragon Law. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Daniel.